the conversation he had with Art. Presently, he hates himself for the way things unfolded. A fraction of him yearns that he had told Art that it was acceptable and that they were still family. Yet, a larger part of him longs for a reality where Art had never revealed anything. Deep down, a part of Ray had always sensed Art's uniqueness. However, his pride came in the way that made him believe that he had raised a genius that comes once in a millennium. The signs were always there, but he chose to ignore them. He makes his way back to Rinia's house. She lets him know that Art has already left, but he had already guessed that that would be the case. He is left shocked when she reveals that she already knows about Art's previous life. She explains that she sees many things, however, when it comes to Art, even she has to struggle to piece together what's in store for him. She can tell what Ray is going through, as her long life has given her an insight that only a few possess. She informs him that the heart is the brain's biggest enemy. Emotions make us do things that are illogical and inefficient. They make everyone weak as individuals but strong as a group. Ray deduces that Art must have been thinking with emotions when he told them, but Rinia admits that even she doesn't know what he was feeling. Despite this, she has known Art ever since he was a toddler. He has come a long way since then. Perhaps this was the biggest step he has taken to break out of his shell. After a long conversation, Rinia excuses herself to prepare food for Alice. Before leaving, she gives Ray a gift from Winsome. It is something wrapped in a blanket. When he removes the blanket, he is surprised to find a mana beast inside. It resembles a bear cub. As always, Ellie's cuteness radar picks up on it, and she appears behind Ray, asking him if she can keep it. He is about to tell her that it would be difficult for her to bond with it since she is still a kid with an undeveloped mana core. However, as soon as her eyes meet the mana beasts, they instantly turn yellow, indicating that a bond has been formed between them. This ruins Ray's plan to have a mighty bond to ride into battle, but he reassures himself that it's for the best that his daughter has one to protect her. Ellie couldn't be happier with her cute bond and decided to name him Boo. After she is done playing with her new bond, she finally tells Ray that Alice has woken up. He makes his way inside the house where he finds his wife sitting on the couch with a blank expression. She asks him where Art is, but a part of her already knows that he is gone. She still hasn't come to terms with Art's past. She asks Ray if she is horrible for calling him sick. She did this because she didn't want to accept the truth. Ray assures her that it's what any normal person would have done. Once again, she asks him if she is terrible for doubting whether Art is their son. He's left shocked. He wants to tell her that she isn't, but he can't bring himself to say it since he was thinking the same earlier. Even though he is having a hard time, he knows that this is much tougher for Alice than it is for him. She was the one who went through the pain of pregnancy for 9 months. She was also the one who nursed him, fed him, and taught him the ways of this world. But now, all that seems like a lie. Alice offers an apology for her query, and he embraces her, reassuring her that it's all right. He explains that they simply need time to navigate their emotions. However, her next question sends shivers down Ray's spine. She begins to contemplate what their son might have been like if Art hadn't taken over. He hugs her even tighter while telling her that she shouldn't be thinking like that. However, these are the feelings that both of them share deep down. He tries to tell her that he is their son, but he can't bring himself to. They come to a chilling realization that they haven't referred to Art as their son ever since they started talking. Unable to say anything, Ray finally opens up about his feelings. He tells her that right now he can't call Art his son, but hopefully that'll change the next time they see him. However, this doesn't change the fact that they have been a family for 13 years. It's not the blood running through them that makes them a family. It's all that they have gone through that has brought them so close. He reminds Alice of the time when Art was willing to sacrifice his life to save her from the bandits. He finally answers her questions and lets her know that she is not a terrible person. Hearing this, Alice is finally able to stop her tears. She feels a bit embarrassed for looking disgusting. However, Ray kisses her on the forehead and reminds her that she looks beautiful. Their moment is interrupted by Ellie as she calls her mother to come and see her new bond. Both of them can't help but let out a chuckle. Perhaps this is the first step on their long road towards accepting their new reality. Elsewhere, Art finally reaches the land of the deities. They cross a beautiful-looking bridge and arrive at a magnificent golden castle adorned with dragon statues. He begins to feel more nervous as they approach the castle. He is surprised by the lack of guards, but Winsome tells him that they have been watching ever since they crossed the bridge. Upon entering, Winsome heads directly to the throne room to have a meeting with Lord Indrath. This is the first time Art has seen Sylvia's home. He asks Winsome for any last tips before he meets Lord Indrath, Sylvie's grandfather. However, even he doesn't know what to expect since this is a rather particular situation. As they approach the throne room, they are greeted by two guards. This strength is evident from the number of scars on their face, which is a clear indication of their experience in the battle. They addressed Winsome as elder. One of them is even offended that their princess is being carried by someone they considered to be lesser. Winsome instructs them to let it go. Following his order, they ignore Art and open the gate to the room. He takes a big gulp as they finally enter the throne room. Lord Indrath is seated on a magnificent golden throne. Winsome quickly gets down on his knees to greet him. He's unable to sense his mana at all. This is a clear indication of the gap in their strength. Suddenly, he feels intense pain as the markings on his body start to glow. A few seconds later, Art experiences a sudden force pushing him down, compelling him to kneel on the ground. When it's all over, he realizes that Sylvie is no longer in his arms. He is left dumbfounded when he discovers that Lord Indrath has taken Sylvie. He belittles Art by telling him that he did not do a good job training Sylvie, since her mana levels are insultingly low. On top of that, she is hibernating, which means Art has strained her. Art gets angry upon hearing this, but he holds back his anger since he knows that he can't go up against him. Winsome apologizes for his lack of care for not training her while they were in Decathlon. He offers to train her right now, but Lord Indrath tells him that there is no need since he will personally look after her. He taps her on her head, and as soon as he does so, she instantly wakes up. She is understandably a little scared upon seeing the mysterious figure in front of her. Seeing her like this, Art wishes he could embrace her, but he's helpless in this situation. She feels sleepy and asks him if she can go back to sleep. After a quick nod from Art, she goes back to her slumber. After gathering his courage, Art finally addresses the Lord. He asks him for the real reason he was brought here. After all, if training was the sole purpose, they could have done so in some remote dungeon in Decathlon. It's because he was deemed a necessary piece to help them win the war against Agrona and his army. The Lord decides to assign several specialists to help Winsome in training Art. He tells him to be grateful since this is an opportunity only the most talented of the Asuras get. Art questions about how much time they have left before the war begins. However, Lord decides not to answer that and instead advises him to focus on his training. When it's time for him to go home, he'll be notified. Upon seeing Sylvie being taken away by servants, he questions what will happen to her. Lord Indrath informs him that she will stay with him until her training is over. However, this is not a satisfactory answer for him as he wants to know when he will get to see her again. But before he can get a response, Winsome pulls him away and they leave the castle. The two of them walk through a beautiful jungle. Art still has some questions about his meeting with Lord Indrath. For instance, he wants to know what the point of that meeting was. He doesn't like the fact that he has to stay away from Sylvie. Winsome replies by informing him that the relationship between him and the Asuras is that of tolerance. This is the reason why their meeting was held in a private setting. The fact that the Asuras have to rely on a lesser being to help them win the war is a blow to their pride. Despite this fact, they realize that both Sylvie and Art are very important. So Winsome assures him that they will not be mistreated. Their conversation abruptly ends as they have finally arrived at their desired location. Art is angry to see that they have walked for several hours only to have arrived at an ordinary-looking tree. Winsome informs him to hold on tight, after which he suddenly shoves him forward. Logic dictates that he would collide with the tree and probably end up with a broken nose. However, he phases right through and arrives on the other side. Inside the tree, a magnificent cave awaits them. There, they are greeted by another Asura named Cordry, who appears to be the one tasked with training Art. Winsome introduces him to Art and informs him that Cordry belongs to the Thias clan of the Pantheon Asura. He asks Winsome if Lord Indrath has truly granted him the Aether Orb. To prove this, he takes out a mysterious blue orb. Same as the rest of us, Art is left completely confused. Cordry explains that they will be borrowing the dragon race's ability to influence Aether, a powerful element that flows through the entire universe. Once again, Art is bewildered. Before anyone has time to explain, the water on the ground suddenly begins to swirl in a vortex. Winsome explains that it's an aether-rich liquid that will help him train and heal his wounds. Just like that, Art's training in Epheotis has finally begun. In his previous life, Art had experienced a similar training regimen at the institution. The routine consisted of 8 hours of combat training, followed by 10 hours of meditation to nurture their chi centers. However, the training was flawed. The only useful knowledge he gained was about the vital spots of the human body. The techniques taught were rough attempts to inflict as much damage as possible. Despite all this, he followed the training regimen and attended every lecture. Before his chi center had developed, he spent hours losing and failing against his classmates. These memories from his previous life resurface while he's training with Cordry in the soul realm. They fight on plain grasslands. Art can't do anything but hold his hands up as he gets beaten to a pulp. Even after he falls, Cordry shows no mercy and delivers a powerful punch straight at his head. Art manages to move away just enough to avoid a fatal blow, but the punch lands at his shoulder, doing massive damage. He stumbles back on his feet, but it's no use since he's unable to fight. He is incapable of doing anything but watch as Cordry lands a fatal kick and ends the battle. Art instantly wakes up in his physical body back in the cave. Despite a first-hand experience with death, he is undeterred and wants to go for another round. The Azura is impressed with his willpower. Winsome, who is still waiting in the cave, reveals that only 5 minutes have passed. This means that every hour spent in the soul realm is roughly equal to 5 minutes in the real world. Winsome correctly points out that the more Art is forced out of the soul realm, the more time is wasted. If this continues, he won't be able to get ready in time for the war. Art blames Cordry for killing him so often. Cordry defends himself by letting him know that he is only doing as much as he can handle. Even young Asuras who don't die as often have a hard time dealing with the stress. He once again compliments Art for his ability to deal with the sensation of dying. However, this is something that he would rather not experience in the real world. After a few minutes of break, they get right back to it. 1 week has passed since Art started this torture. During this time, he has come to learn that this area is the exclusive training ground for Lord Indrath. When they began, Winsome had informed him that they would be fighting in their soul state. Because of the Aether Orb, the pain of dying has been greatly reduced. This makes him wonder how agonizing it would be to perish in real life. Counting all the time he has spent dying, Art has spent a few months training in the soul realm. The first time he entered the soul realm, he was killed with the first blow, unable to even react. Even after weeks, he was barely able to dodge. Now after all this time, Art finally has a breakthrough as he's able to evade a few of Cordry's attacks. He is impressed to see that Art has finally made some progress. He continues the constant attacks while dishing out some knowledge on how to fight. It soon becomes too much for Art to handle, and he takes a nasty elbow to the leg, followed by a kick to the face. He once again ends up on the ground with a broken leg and jaw. Despite this, he did manage to stay alive for the first time. Cordry compliments him, and Art responds with a kind gesture of his own. Now Art must rest until his soul state is healed. The Azura also informs him that they will be taking a break from combat training for a while. He gets worried that this is because he isn't learning fast enough. On the contrary, Cordry informs him that he is progressing at a much higher rate than the average person or Azura in this case. However, he's worried that he might break if they continue to train so intensely. Art assures him that the Aether Orb won't let him die, but he doesn't understand what Cordry meant. He's not talking about physical injury, he is worried about Art's psychological health. Ever since they began their training, he has been experiencing death over and over again. Death is now an antecedent for pain that even the Azuras find hard to endure. This trauma will get in the way of producing the kind of fighter that Cordry is training Art to become. He further explains that if the pain becomes too much, his body will instinctively try to save itself. On the other hand, just the right amount of pain can become reliable sword and shield. Art ignores all this and tells Cordry that he will be fine. However, even before he can finish his sentence, the Azura unleashes all his terrifying mana. He attacks Art with full force and punches a hole through his stomach. Just as he's about to die, Cordry pats his head and lets him know that he will make him an unparalleled warrior, not just among the lesser races, but among the Azuras as well. With that, he pulls out his fist. Just as he is about to die, Art's thoughts wander to his friends back on Decathan. All of them are hard at work as well. Each of them is preparing in their own way to get strong and defend what they love in the upcoming war. Over a month has passed in the real world, which means Art has been training for a year in the soul realm. On this particular day, he is practicing with his sword, and as usual, he finds himself on the back foot after just a few minutes of fighting with Cordry. Unable to continue, Art's body starts trembling and he falls to the ground. Seeing this, the Azura stops releasing his mana, signaling the end of the fight. After the combat, even an Azura is forced to compliment Art's mysterious sword. However, he lets him know that as a mage, hand-to-hand combat is the best way of fighting. For the sake of the war, Cordry aims to train Art to be the knight who can protect Decathan. He lets him know that his fighting style is best suited for dueling a single opponent. Alakria possesses the descendants of Asuras in the form of mixed bloods. They will be the strongest force in the war. He advises Art that he should expect to be put in a situation where he will fight multiple mixed bloods. To succeed in such a situation, he will need precise mana usage. Physical combat augmented with precise mana usage will be the most efficient way of defeating the enemy. Cordry recalls everything they have learned so far. Art's first lesson was to learn to stay alive. He had to fight and dodge at high speeds. His second lesson was to fight under immense pressure. To do this, Cordry used his King's Force, or killing intent, as it's referred to by the Lesser. With this training, Art learned to strengthen his tolerance. Now it's time for his third lesson. In this phase of his training, he must learn to narrow his focus. Cordry goes on to attack once again. Art throws powerful punches, but Cordry manages to avoid each of them without any effort. He lets Art know that although his punches are very strong, they are a waste of stamina if they don't land. Proper conservation of mana is important. This concept also applies to the physical body. Art persists in his attempts to land an attack, but each one misses its mark. Cordry manages to grab hold of his hand. He goes behind him and prepares to launch a massive magical attack. He instructs Art to defend himself with mana. However, despite that, it's not enough, and a powerful beam goes right through him. Once again, Art wakes up in the cave. This time they have an unexpected guest waiting for them. It's a young Azura who resembles Cordry. He refers to him as a master. Cordry introduces him as Tachi. He will be Art's new training partner. Both the boys are left surprised, and Tachi seems disappointed. He was told that he would be receiving private training. He lets the young Azura know that he will be training while sparring with Art. It's obvious from his attitude that he believes it to be beneath him to train with a human. Cordry scolds him for complaining even though he has been given the rare honor of training with the Aether Orb. Tachi clarified that he meant it was beneath the great Cordry to train a mere human. He's unable to reply and lets out a deep sigh. He ignores Tachi and begins the lesson. He tells Art that the Pantheon races all differ in their use of what is called Force-type mana. Tachi has been training in the special arts of the Thias clan. They are able to predict their opponent's movement by observing their distribution of weight and momentum. By doing this, they can match their attack to their opponent and take advantage of their strength. This way they're able to defend while conserving energy for their own attack. He showed Art a glimpse of what he was talking about when they were fighting earlier. Before going back to the Soul Realm, he instructs both of them on what they're allowed to do. He instructs Tachi to use his full strength while fighting the human. Art, on the other hand, is not allowed to use any offensive moves. He can only block and deflect. The only offensive maneuvers he's allowed to use are throws. Tachi's pride once again gets in the way. He complains that Art should be the one using his full strength while restrictions should be placed on him. This once again displays the pride that the Azuras have in their strength. Cordry once again scolds the young Azura for doubting him. With that out of the way, the three of them entered the Soul Realm. A few days have passed since Art began his training with Tachi. He has already grown used to Tachi's fighting style and is able to dodge all of his attacks. Cordry is impressed to see this. Even though Tachi is only 7 years old, he has displayed immense talent from the beginning. Despite this fact, Art has been able to keep up with him only after a few days. That too with all the restrictions that were placed on him. His movement is slowly becoming sharper with little to no wasted move. Even Cordry is left to wonder how something like this is possible. In all his years as a mentor, he has nurtured many pupils. Some even went on to become leading figures in the Thias clan. However, training Art has brought up sensations that he had never felt before. Emotions such as excitement, awe, and pride continued to well up inside him. These are emotions that he never even felt for himself, and now he experiences them for a seemingly insignificant boy. He wonders what kind of figure he would have been if Art had been born as an Azura. He would have been a prominent figure even among the highest echelons of power. Meanwhile, Art keeps engaging in the fight with Tachi, skillfully dodging his attacks, which slowly makes Tachi more and more furious. Eventually, Art is able to grab his hand and throw him to the ground, winning the fight. Slowly but surely, the number of opponents Art faces multiplies. First, there are 2 with the addition of a female Azura. Then it becomes 3. Eventually, it reaches 4. Despite being outnumbered, he has become skilled enough to battle 4 Azuras simultaneously. His defense relies on precise movements, allowing him to fend off their attacks effectively. 4 months go by in the real world, which is equivalent to about 4 years inside this soul realm. Art's physical body has barely aged at all. However, he has gained years of muscle memory and mana core levels. His 14th birthday recently passed, but he spent it like any other day, training and honing his body. Cordry has helped him redefine his mana to aid in combat. However, he didn't learn any new things conceptually. Art is not sure why this is the case. Perhaps it's because of the psychological difference between humans and Asuras, or maybe Cordry is not allowed to teach him anything because he's not a member of their clan. However, Art decides to place his trust in him and absorb whatever he is taught. After all this time, he has finally completed his training with Cordry. He thanks all the Asuras for helping him train. However, they don't share his sentiments and instead are frustrated that they lost to a mere human. This is especially true for Tachi. Art expresses his gratitude to Cordry for training him, acknowledging the impact it had on his skills. Winsome also takes a moment to thank Cordry sincerely for his invaluable assistance. Before they leave, Cordry decides to give Art a warning. He reminds him that the mages in Alakria have been guided by Asuras as well. Their mana are generations ahead of anything they have on Decathan. It is frustrating to him that they can't fight against Alakria. However, it is necessary as breaking the pact could mean destroying the entire world. This means that the future of Decathan lies in the hands of Art and his comrades. The mage finally exits the cave after a long time. As they head to the training area for Art's next phase of training, Winsome hands him a scroll containing information about their enemy. Art is left horrified after reading the information on the scroll. Alakria has 4 strong mages who have been nicknamed the 4 Scythes. Each of the Scythes has a retainer. These retainers are each capable of dispatching a lance. The Scythes themselves are even stronger. Winsome reveals that the mage that killed Lance Aaliyah was a retainer. Art slowly begins to grasp the level of strength that his enemy possesses. Both continents will be sending millions of soldiers in the upcoming war. For now, Art's family is safe, but he can't help but wonder how long that will last. Instead of worrying himself, he decides to focus on his training for now. They finally arrive at the location of the next phase of his training. It's a cliff overlooking a thick jungle. He has to complete a task while only using the items in the bag that he is given. On top of that, he's not allowed to use any external mana arts. To complete the mission, he needs to obtain the pelt of a raptor squirrel, the beast core of a silver panther, and the claws of a titan bear. This is a test to see whether Art is ready to learn more about Sylvia's will. Before beginning, Winsome sets one more condition. Art must wear a bell at all times. Once he has collected all the items, he needs to break the bell to inform Winsome. With everything set, Art jumps down the cliff into the jungle below. The true challenge of the test becomes apparent shortly after it commences. Despite days of effort, Art struggles to catch a squirrel. During this period, he learns a crucial detail. It's not only the sound of the bell that alerts the squirrels, but they are also highly sensitive to mana. Since they are at the bottom of the food chain, they have developed their senses to make up for their lack of strength. Just hiding one's presence isn't enough to catch them. Art decides to hide all the mana in his body, leaving him defenseless in this jungle. However, even that wasn't enough. He realized that it was also necessary to clear his mind and hide his intent. But it was easier said than done. A few more days passed, and he was able to learn more things. Firstly, leaking a small amount of mana didn't drive away the squirrels, but it did alarm them to the degree that made it impossible to catch them. Secondly, internalizing mana didn't alarm them. However, too much of it caused his intent to bleed out, causing them to run away. The final and most crucial lesson Art learns is that external mana flow doesn't alert the squirrels. In fact, they are even more observant of it. He begins to work on developing a new technique to aid him in catching the squirrels. He focuses on his mana channels, which carry purified mana from his mana core. These channels are more advanced than his mana veins, which transport the unpurified mana absorbed from the atmosphere. For this technique, he has to balance the output of purified mana and the input of the atmospheric mana. It has been many years since he learned this rotation technique from Sylvia. Now he is able to use it unconsciously, which would help with this new technique. With the perfect balance of input and output, Art would be able to use mana without anyone or anything being able to sense what he was doing. After concentrating for a while, he's successfully able to use this technique. The squirrels gather in front of him to eat the mushrooms without running away. Seeing this, Art is unable to hold his excitement and lets out a big shout. The problem remains that he's unable to move while using this technique. This makes it impossible to catch the squirrels. As night falls, he prepares to go to sleep. While lying down under the night sky, he wonders how his friends and family are doing. He pushes those thoughts aside to focus on his training. The next morning, he goes back to improving his technique. He needs to be able to move fast enough so that the squirrels are unable to react to the sound of the bell. He sets his target to reach a tree before the bell chimes. He has to do this while using the new technique. He starts his training but is met with many failures. He remembers how Cordry stressed controlling mana's flow and power while manipulating one's presence. Erasing your presence by balancing the input and output of mana, while also instantly gaining speed to reach your opponent. He wonders if this is the skill that Winsome wanted to test with this mission. Some time passes and Art slowly starts to get better at it. Winsome has been watching him from a distance, wondering what he's doing. It has been 2 weeks and Art still hasn't been able to catch a squirrel. This leaves Winsome disappointed. Although the squirrels' tails are sensitive to mana fluctuations, they are simple-minded creatures. All Art had to do was hide his presence while staying motionless with some bait in his hand. Meanwhile, he prepares to use his new technique to try and finally catch the squirrel. Winsome is left in disbelief upon witnessing it. Art carries out the technique perfectly and is able to catch the squirrel before the bell chimes. Unbeknownst to Art, he has just completed the first step of the Mirage Walk. This is the essence of what makes the Thias clan so superior in physical combat. Winsome is left to wonder how much more Art will achieve in the future. Art's next target is a silver panther. Utilizing the Mirage Walk once again, he attempts to attack the creature. However, it swiftly dodges his strike and begins to run away. Art tries to chase after it, but it disappears before he has a chance to catch up. The night before, Winsome came and informed him of his achievement in learning the introductory step of the Mirage Walk. After that, Art spends 3 weeks walking through the forest. He eventually encounters Claude, a silver panther he has marked as his target. He has become proficient enough at the burst step that he is able to clear almost 10 yards. However, even that isn't enough to catch Claude. While washing his face by the river, Art sees a squirrel on top of a tree. This makes him hungry, thinking about how long it has been since he last ate. Suddenly, he hears a bird approaching. It is trying to catch the squirrel for its next meal. With a swift motion, it easily catches the squirrel. Watching it hunt, Art realizes that the bird calculated the squirrel's movement and predicted where it would jump. This gives him an idea. He tries to catch the bird with Mirage steps, but they are much faster than squirrels. He starts observing the birds every day for a week. They are much more stealthy and faster than squirrels. The birds were also smart. They knew that when they revealed themselves, the squirrel would try to run in a particular direction. They used this knowledge to manipulate the squirrel's movement. As an observer, Art could see the bird beforehand. However, the squirrel had no way of knowing. The panthers are another story altogether. Claude was smart. It knew that it could evade Art with its amazing speed. At the same time, he wasn't dumb enough to engage him in a fight. This is because he has realized that Art is stronger. Even though the Mirage Walk conceals the user from the opponent, Art still had to make that first, incredibly fast step. It gave Claude just enough time to run away. If he could get rid of that initial step, it would appear as if he teleported through space. Then he could finally defeat Claude. In his past life, Art had learned how the muscles in a human body work. They operate in pairs, each responsible for half the movement. For instance, the biceps flexes to curl the arm around the shoulder, and the triceps activates soon after when the arm is straightened out. This completes the motion of throwing a punch. The body's mechanism becomes more complex when the body is put into motions such as walking, running, or jumping. He intends to use this knowledge from his previous life to strengthen his technique even more. He has been working and combining precise techniques to artificially trigger a sequence in his body that mimics the use of a muscle even when standing still. If he succeeds, he will achieve something even Cordry cannot do, mastering the ability to use the Mirage Walk while in a standing position. But it is much more difficult than learning the first step. Art is met with countless failures, and he continues to grow more frustrated. While training, he notices something odd. The forest is unusually quiet. Upon looking around, he comes across a fight between 2 silver panthers. It's a territorial dispute. Art gets excited as this is a rare opportunity for him to observe Claude in action. The other panther jumps at Claude, but he swiftly dodges encounters with a slash of his own. However, the fight stops abruptly as Claude picks up on something. He quickly runs away, leaving both Art and the other panther confused. Art ignores that and realizes that this might be his opportunity to take down the other silver panther. He uses his Mirage Walk and jumps towards the panther. This catches the panther off guard and is able to grab onto it. After a small struggle, he manages to finally catch a silver panther. However, the panther is not about to give up and continues to attack Art with its claws. Desperate to get away, it jumps over the cliff into the chasm below. Having no other option, Art is forced to break the rule about not using mana and uses his wind magic to slow himself down. Art manages to land safely, but the silver panther isn't so lucky. It finally becomes apparent why Claude ran away as Art hears a loud rumble. The source of the sound is none other than a Titan bear. However, contrary to its name, it looks more like a cub than an actual bear. What's more surprising is that it can even talk. Wanting to protect its meal, it decides to attack Art. It uses a powerful attack that sends him tumbling backward. Art decides to use his Mirage Walk to dodge the attacks. However, even with the increased speed, he is barely able to do so. As the fight continues, the bear can predict Art's movement and launches a powerful attack that nearly takes him out. He's put in a near-death situation. This isn't the Soul Realm, so if he dies, he will die for real. Realizing this, he readies himself to face his opponent once again. Whenever the bear slashes its claw, the resulting attack is also a sharp slash that moves through the air. On the other hand, when the bear punches, it produces a blunt force attack. Due to the damage to his legs, Art realizes that he needs to finish this quickly, otherwise his legs won't last. He uses the Mirage Walk to quickly appear behind the bear. It hears the sound of the bell and quickly slashes its claw at it. However, to its surprise, it was all a feint. Art's body isn't there, and the bear only manages to cut the bell. Art once again appears behind him and manages to land a strong punch. With one attack, Art has successfully taken out the most powerful target in this mission. Due to the overexertion, he collapses as his body gives in to all the injuries. Since the bell was destroyed, Winsome arrives at the location soon afterward. He wonders why Art had come all the way down here. He is shocked to see the aftermath of the fight between Art and the Titan bear. Winsome quickly gets into the action and assesses Art's condition. He has 3 broken ribs and many deep gashes on his chest. Even his legs are in a bad condition, all this from a cub. Winsome is left surprised, as even a fully grown bear standing at 10 feet tall wouldn't have been able to cause this much devastation. Upon closer inspection, Winsome notices the strange markings on the bear's body. The dead bear suddenly stands up and a tentacle pops out from its chest. Winsome instantly realizes that it's a demon leech, an intelligent monster native only to Ephiodus. It has the ability to possess other animals and strengthen its host's core to an amazing degree. It would even be deadly to Mnajura. Agrona himself experimented on them to create a strengthening serum. This is the same serum that Lucas used during the attack on the Exiros Academy. Winsome moves forward and takes out the tentacle to finish the monster off. He crushes the tentacle and obtains a blue orb. He becomes impressed that Art was able to take out such a monster. He tells Art that his difficulties have paid off while feeding him the blue orb. Art's body suddenly starts to glow. Some time passes and he wakes up injured in a bed, a situation he is much too familiar with at this point. He becomes concerned as he is unable to feel his legs. However, a strange figure reassures him that his legs are fine. The figure is a female Azura. Her name is Meyer, the person who saved Art from a lifetime of disability. It would have been faster to use healing arts, but that would have resulted in his legs taking a weird shape. Although it took 2 days, his legs are now healing properly. Art quickly jumps up upon hearing that he has been out for 2 whole days. She quickly tries to get him to lie down again. It took a lot of work to fix his legs. If he were to move around now, he would cause more damage. Art expresses his gratitude to her for the treatment and her hospitality. Before leaving, she mentions that she doesn't treat just anyone. She did this for Art because she wanted to meet the boy who is supposedly going to save the world. As soon as she leaves, he decides to continue his training. Since he can't move around much, he decides to meditate and try to heal faster. While meditating, he's shocked to realize that there is something different with his core. The color of his mana core has turned silver. Before he even realizes it, his beast will suddenly activate on its own. He becomes freaked out. After a while, he starts to see purple specks floating around in the air. He calms his breathing and manages to take control of his beast will. Meyer also comes back at this time. She is surprised to see that Art truly has inherited the realm heart. He becomes confused by what she is talking about. She explains that it is evident from the physical manifestation displayed when he taps into Sylvia's power. Realm Heart, or the Realm Heart physique, is an ability that only the Indraft bloodline can possess. She inquires whether Art was able to see the colors that make up the physical realm. Thinking back to the purple specks, he replies affirmatively. She goes on to explain that the Realm Heart physique was named after the ancestors of the Indrath clan. In this state, the user's attunement to the physical realm is said to be unparalleled. Although it doesn't increase the user's strength, it offers knowledge and insight that no one without it can hope to acquire. Art asks her why he was able to see the purple specks, even though he was only able to see 4 colors when he used the second phase of Realm Heart before. Perhaps this is one of those annoying times again when the Asuras aren't allowed to reveal secrets to the lesser. Meyer breaks out into a chuckle and admits that most Asuras are greedy and secretive, particularly the Indrath clan. However, she tells him that she has lived long enough and experienced enough to not care about such stupid things. She offers to take a stroll with him, promising to teach him a few things along the way. The two of them go to an indoor garden. Unable to walk, Meyer pushes him around in a wheelchair. This garden is home to many different mana beasts who feed on the raw mana in this part of Epheotis. It isn't easy for anyone to manipulate raw mana. This is true for Asuras and mana beasts as well. Mages with certain affinities have an easier time absorbing mana that coincides with that element. She gives the example of a firebug that just landed on Art's finger. The firebug naturally took in the red mana particle as it has an affinity for the fire element. The same concept applies to mages. To some with Realm Heart, it would appear that the mage is absorbing only the red particles, but after refining the mana, it would appear white. Similarly, if this mage had a water affinity, after the refinement process, his body would have a large amount of water element, and if the mage were to execute a fireball spell, then he would have to concentrate a lot. However, if he were to use a water spell, he would have no trouble. Art is correctly able to deduce that it's because of the influence that absorbing a large amount of water element had on him during the refining process. Meyer explains that after being exposed to one particular element for so long, the mage would have gained better insight about that element. While walking, they arrive at a tea table. Both of them sit around the table to have a cup of tea. She questions Art about what he knows about Aether. He replies by telling her that he doesn't know much apart from the fact that it has the ability to manipulate time. Meyer describes that Aether is different from mana. Some have speculated that Aether makes up the building blocks of the universe, while mana is what fills it with light. Simply put, it can be thought of as a cup while mana is the water inside. It is easy to manipulate the water. On the other hand, it's difficult to change the shape of the glass without breaking it. Even the Indrath clan can't seem to do so. What they can do is detect Aether using the Realm Heart physique. The purple specks that Art saw earlier was Aether. The greater the capability of the mage, the more water they can manipulate. By manipulating Aether, one can gain control over the glass itself. There are 3 components that make up Aether. The control over time, known as Avum, the authority over space, known as Spatium, and the influence over living components, known as Vuvum. No matter how strong one is, they will only be able to master one path. Over time, the Asuras have discovered ways to discern where their aptitude lies. Art becomes intrigued and can't wait to know the answer. In a shocking turn of events, Meyer's body lights up with the same runes that Art has, indicating that she is able to use Realm Heart as well. She informs that the aptitude of a mage is discerned by the runes that appear on their body. Meyer is on the Vuvum path. This is why she was able to heal Art. She instructs him to activate his Realm Heart so they can determine his aptitude. Upon inspecting them closely, Meyer becomes fascinated by them. He starts using all 4 of his elements, and soon after, he begins to see the purple specks again. He wonders why he didn't notice them before. She informs him that it would have been difficult because of his humanity. She continues speaking, telling him that Aether is fundamentally different from mana. He will only face failure if he tries to manipulate it the same as he does with mana. She brings up the example of glass and water once again. One can drink, gargle, and spit out water all they want. But can you imagine gargling glass? Aether is present all around, but in the boundary that confines them, similar to how the glass confines the water. Vuvum is the power that Meyer used to heal Art's shattered legs. He's full of questions right now. After finding out her affinity, Meyer studied Vuvum for centuries, but even now she is not confident in her ability to explain it to Art. However, this is not a satisfactory answer for Art, as he is desperate to learn it himself. She agrees to teach him a few things. The first thing he must know is that Aether can't be absorbed. You can only change its presence and influence on reality. An individual's core is what connects them to the physical realm. So even though Aether can't be directly manipulated like mana, the core is still the most crucial part. Art's affinity for Aether will be revealed in due time. For now, she tells him that after a certain point, his cultivation won't depend on his ability to control mana, but on gathering insight and knowledge. Meyer reveals that there is a reason why he has the ability to utilize Aether. After thinking about it for a bit, Art realizes that it's because he is a quadra-elemental mage. It was the insight of the 4 elements that allowed him to look past the water and see the glass. Maya realizes that Art's body has started to tremble. She informs him that it's okay for him to release Realm Heart now. She even compliments his ability to use it for as long as he did. The first thing on his mind is whether Meyer was able to tell his Aether affinity. However, before revealing it, she decides to give him a warning. She is still unsure whether he can consciously control Aether, the same as the Asuras. Despite being able to use all 4 elements and having the Realm Heart and a dragon's will, the fact remains that he's a human. He becomes frustrated upon hearing this. However, Meyer has more to tell him. She reveals that he was never meant to go down the path of Avum, even though he was able to stop time using his dragon will. Like Sylvia, Art is meant to control the very fabric of the boundaries of the physical realm. In simple terms, he is on the spatium path, meaning he has the ability to control space. However, as Meyer said earlier, despite this knowledge, there is a possibility that he might never be able to consciously control Aether. He pleads with her, practically begging her to guide him on how to learn to utilize Aether. It all comes down to the fact that his human self won't be able to handle the burden. Meyer pities the fact that Art's tremendous potential might be wasted because of something he can't control. However, she reminds him that knowledge is an immeasurable strength. He might one day find a way past the boundaries of his birth and find a path that even the Asuras don't know. She assures him that she wants the best for him, and even though Realm Heart can't be fully utilized, it can still help him because of its sensory functions. With Realm Heart, his quadra-element magic, and his physical prowess, Art has many tools at his disposal. However, she reveals that the new technique that he has developed can't be one of them. She instructs him never to use it again. In one instant, Art feels like all his hard work and all his weeks of training have been for nothing. She asked him how Mirage Walk works, seemingly surprised that Art was able to teach himself. His fondest hope was that she would change her mind after learning about its mechanism. But it was clear that this move was too dangerous to use in combat. His breakthrough into the silver stage was a pleasant surprise. Combined with his training with Cordry, Art would easily be a double A-class adventurer. However, now he had nothing in terms of Mon arts. The only thing he had managed to learn was Mirage Walk, and that too was taken away. On the other hand, actual Asuras are residing in Alakria. Their mana manipulation is way beyond anything he can imagine. Even a single retainer was able to wipe out an entire team led by a lance. Meyer told him that knowledge is power, however he's left to wonder how it'll help him win against Alakria. The next day, she comes to visit him to see the progress of his recovery. The pain is a lot, but now he's at least able to walk. He is surprised when he looks up. He sees that she has activated her Realm Heart. She reveals that she has asked Winsome for some time with him, meaning that Art will get to train with Meyer and possibly learn